not every week or day or just life in general does not always go as planned, and that is definitely this week. This video that I'm making did not go as planned, like at all. So at the beginning of this week, or this video, I'm really just doing one day, at least that was my mind. I was kind of like filming a day in the life, and then things kind of changed, which I'll tell you guys about later on, just kind of everything that happened. It got a little bit crazy this week. But for starters here, I am just making up some breakfast, and I am doing an oatmeal bake. So most of the time we stick to sourdough pancakes, sourdough French toast, and eggs and sausage bacon. That's like the staples of breakfast that we do in our home. But every once in a while I like to switch it up just to keep everybody on their toes. Really just to keep things not really, it's just because it depends on what I have on hand. And I noticed that I had a bunch of oatmeal that I wanted to use, so I'm making a oatmeal bake. This is much easier to make like a whole bake rather than separate bowls of oatmeal. When you have a really large family and big eating kids like I do, I have made oatmeal. I mean, obviously I've made bowls of oatmeal in the past, but it just, each bowl I have to make and put all the different things in there. We like to add a lot of butter to our oatmeal just to get that really nice, healthy fat in the morning. And so when I'm making separate bowls of oatmeal, I pour the oatmeal in, I'm putting the water, and I put the milk in, I put the butter, and I put the honey or syrup, whatever I'm using to sweeten it, whatever fruit I want. And then when I have individual bowls, I have certain kids saying, oh, you know, I want blueberries, I want strawberries, I want no fruit. And I'm not that type of person. I don't like, no. We're all eating the same thing. So for me, it's so much easier just to throw every single thing into a bowl, mix it up, throw it in the oven, warm it up, bake it, and then we have breakfast where I'm not having to like do each bowl individually. So anyway, this is just a blueberry oatmeal bake. It was just, I looked up a recipe. A lot of times when I'm cooking, I will Google a recipe of something that I'm looking for. If it's not already a recipe that we have tested on our blog, I will search something up, but I always make a lot of modifications, and that's because one, if I don't have something, I'll just find a substitute, and two, I do try to use healthier ingredients than like a typical recipe would call for. So sometimes if something calls for sugar, I might use honey or syrup. Not always. I mean, we use sugar too, but sometimes I'll do that. I typically, like I said about the butter, I like to add in extra butter a lot of times. And if it calls for like a vegetable oil, I'll definitely use coconut oil or butter rather than like a vegetable oil or even like olive oil. I don't like to really heat that up as much. So I'll make some substitutions, but I get the general idea sometimes from a recipe that I just kind of Google up, but then I will make the modifications that I think is best for our family. So after I got this in the oven, I decided to clean out the fridge. Our kids are still, and I mentioned that we had our fair last week in a couple videos back, and when we were at the fair, we were up super late every night and the kids were sleeping in, and they are somehow like sticking to that schedule. I cannot get them back to wanting to go to bed early and like wake back up at 7. These kids are on like a 9 to 9 now, which during the summertime it's fine. We'll definitely have to switch back once school starts, but for now it's working. So when I got the oatmeal in the oven, most of the kids were still sleeping, and so I decided to go ahead and clean out the refrigerator. This is something that I've been needing to do. It is so dirty, and I have not gotten around to like literally taking everything out, taking out the drawers, taking out all like the containers that the condiments stay in, and actually washing these things. So bringing them over to the sink and soaping them and like drying them and getting it clean. And man, the refrigerator, when it was done, looked so good. I love having a clean, organized fridge. So to do this, the first thing I'm doing is just, like I said, taking everything out, wiping everything down, and then I am sorting through things. Now you'll notice in here, I'll be the first to admit, we are not perfect. I know people think when I am cooking that I use, and I do, I make most things from scratch. I make a lot of my own dressings, I make a lot of my own sauces, but a couple, I don't remember what video, it was a video where I was making sandwiches and I used some regular mayo, and I had comments of people that could not believe that I was using store-bought mayo. Now, I make my own mayo. I've made my own mayo hundreds of times. I know how to do it. It's easy. I know it's healthier, but sometimes you buy regular mayonnaise and that's okay. And I definitely do that as well. In fact, that mayonnaise was because my husband took 3 of our older boys on a fishing camping trip a few weeks ago, and they packed sandwiches. And so we got mayonnaise that was easy to squeeze out that he could take on the trip. And I'm not gonna like throw it away because we're at home and I can make my own. So obviously I'm gonna use that. So anyway, you are gonna see that in my refrigerator, we don't have all perfect ingredients, but I will say that a lot of times when we have things in here, they're not always things that we would use on a regular basis. In fact, I'm checking and seeing that some of this stuff actually expired, so I'm having to throw a few things away. But sometimes we get things for recipe testing because we do have a blog where we share recipes, and so I don't always show from scratch things on there, so we're using things that are for recipe testing. And then also for a long time we had Hershey syrup in our refrigerator, and I kept trying to like think back, like, when did I ever buy that? That's not something I would normally buy. And then I remembered that after I had Jacob, who will be 1 this month, someone brought us ice cream and some syrup when they brought us a meal for the dessert. It was ice cream and syrup. And so that's been almost a year ago and we still have it. So some of these things aren't frequently used things, but every once in a while we get different sauces and dressings because we want to make things easy, because we're recipe testing, and they get kind of shoved to the back because I do typically try to make my own dressings when we make salads and different things. But anyway, not that I have to explain to you what is in my fridge or have any type of like excuse. I just know from like past comments that people are going to be like, what, you buy ranch? And yeah, sometimes we buy ranch, and I also sometimes make my own. We are just a very normal family, and I am doing the best that I can do. And sometimes we have to buy store-bought ranch. So anyway, after getting everything all sorted out and figured out if there was anything expired or, kind of getting things back in order, I started putting things back in the fridge. And obviously for this, I'm putting things in like categories just to make it easier to find the things that I need. We have so much produce right now from the gardens. To be honest with you, my daughter planted a garden this year pretty much by herself, because when it was the time to do a garden, I was more hyped up about flowers than I was produce. Years past, I've been more with produce than flowers. It just kind of, it just depends on the season and the time. And I didn't feel as if I had much time to do both. She really wanted to plant a garden, so she did. It kind of got neglected. So we are not growing many vegetables this year at all. I mean, my flower gardens are doing great. We have fresh bouquets of flowers on the table, countertops, in the bathrooms at all times. I'm proud of that. But the produce isn't going great. But we have so many people in our lives that have these like blooming, crazy gardens. And so I feel like I'm getting just as much produce given to me as I would if I was growing it. So we are so blessed to have that. So you can see that I'm organizing in my peppers and my tomatoes, and we still have zucchinis and cucumbers. So we're getting all the garden fresh vegetables. Hopefully next year we'll get our act together and be able to do flowers and produce. But for now, this is just the season of life we're in. We're busy, and I'm just trying to keep the amount of things on my plate that I can do to manage a household without being like overly stressed. So we can't always do it all, and I'm just doing the best that we can. So after I got the refrigerator all cleaned out, I wiped down the outside. Stainless steel fridges really show every single smudge mark, fingerprint, and we have a lot of those going around with little ones. And so this is actually a job that I do practically daily, wiping down the outside of the refrigerator. But since I was cleaning the fridge, I definitely want to do it now, so it was clean on the inside and on the outside. All right, so once I was done with the refrigerator, the breakfast was ready and kids were waking up. So I got the table all set and I served this, and we did actually top it with some butter and some syrup. All right, so now I am just cleaning up breakfast, and at this time in the week, this is still one day. My younger sister is still pregnant. At the time of me cooking and cleaning and doing this, she is still pregnant. At the time of the voiceover, right now when I'm sitting here, I can happily say that her little baby girl is born. It is quite the birth story. Nothing went as planned. My sister is an absolute champ. She deserves like the biggest like medal of a person that can handle and endure more than anybody else. Like, I don't even know how to explain it all. It was crazy. So at this point when I am filming, I'm cleaning at breakfast, and my sister is 42 and 2 days, so like 2 weeks, 2 days past her due date. And at the time of this, she is having her midwife come over because she was planning a home birth to start kind of a natural induction protocol, which was going to include some like castor oil, some different herbs, some breast pump, massaging, different positions, just to try to get herself to go into labor. So after I was done cleaning with breakfast, I got some bread going. You guys know how I've been like keeping fresh bread on the counter like at all times for my sisters that were having babies so I can make French toast casserole. I mean, my family is probably sick of bread because we keep making it and babies don't come, and then we eat it, then we make it, then we eat it. Like, I have had homemade bread on the counter for like weeks, and sometimes babies just do what they want. So after breakfast, I'm getting this bread made up because I am like so certain that this natural induction is going to work, and she's going to call me in the middle of the night sometime, have me come over, and I'm going to be there for her birth because the plan was for me to be there. Well, I was there. I'll say that, just didn't quite go as planned. So I'm getting my bread going. And after the bread, I am making some lunch and dinner, and I'm making them kind of at the same time here because, again, I want to have lots of food ready for my family for when I have to leave, because when I go over to her house for her birth, this is going to be the first time that I'm ever leaving Jacob at home. So my husband's going to be first time having all 6 kids, so I'm not leaving them hanging. I'm going to get some food ready. So for lunch and dinner, I'm throwing in like a bunch of ground beef into my pot here, and we have stuff for tacos and I have stuff for lasagna. So I thought I could kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone and just make up a lot right now, and it will be enough for us for lunch to have taco salads, and then I would have enough for dinner to make lasagna. So I started by putting 4 pounds of beef in my big pot, and I added in some chopped up onions. Now the meat was kind of partially still frozen, so I did put a lid on this just to help it kind of cook a little faster. Anytime I have meat that's still a little bit frozen, I'll do that. I feel like with the steam, it'll cook a lot faster. So I'm gonna get all of my toppings ready for the taco salad. I'm dicing up tomatoes, jalapenos, I'm making some homemade guacamole. I'm also shredding up a bunch of cheese because I'll need this cheese for the taco salad, and I'll also need it for the lasagna for the dinners. Now after all the meat is done and cooked, I'm gonna be splitting it in half because I'm gonna be seasoning 1/2 of it for taco salads. That's gonna be getting like all kinds of like taco seasonings on it. So I'm using salt and pepper and garlic and onion and a lot of chili powder and kind of making it more Mexican-y. And then the other half, I'm going to be doing Italian seasoning. So I'm also doing the salt, pepper, garlic, onion, but then I'm going to be putting basil, rosemary, oregano, those types of seasoning on that one. Now, the reason why I even thought about making lasagna is when I was cleaning out my pantry, I saw a couple like partial boxes of lasagna noodles. I find that when I make lasagna, I never use a whole box. And so I ended up with a couple partial boxes. I don't even know when they're from because I haven't made lasagna in a very long time. So I was like, you know what, probably should use these up. So I'm using a couple different boxes of noodles to make this lasagna. Now, I'm also using cottage cheese. I know a lot of times lasagna calls for ricotta cheese, and sometimes I use that, but I've noticed that cottage cheese tastes just as good and it's a lot cheaper, so it's just a way to save a little money. If you want to make lasagna and you see it calls for ricotta cheese, I feel like cottage cheese tastes just as good and it's definitely saved you some money. So anyway, I'm going to use cottage cheese and I add in some eggs, a little bit of salt and pepper, and that will kind of be my cheese mixture for my lasagna. So for the lasagna, I like to always put the red sauce on the bottom because I find if I put the sauce down first that the noodles will have enough liquid to cook in there so I don't have to cook them before putting them in the oven. I have bought oven baked ready, I've bought regular ones, and it always seems like either way it is enough to if you put the liquid in first, then put the noodles in, and it makes the noodles do cook just fine just when I put it straight in the oven to bake. So after I got all of my layers in and made my lasagna, I put that in the oven to bake so then it will be ready for later. I'll just leave it on the counter with a little towel over it and it'll stay nice and ready for dinner in case I ended up leaving. All right, so for lunch, I'm just serving this up with some chips and some lettuce, and then putting the meat on there and topping it with cheese, salsa, sour cream, and guacamole. And I'm also drizzling it with some of this barbecue date sauce. I love this stuff, and I love the sweet and spicy contrast of the jalapenos and hot sauce and salsa with the sweetness of the date sauce. All right, so this next clip is of us cleaning the entryway. This is several days later. My sister's induction did not, well, I guess it did kind of work. She did go into labor with the different things that her midwife tried, but things did not progress in the way that they should. She was not really dilating. The labor kept stalling out. And so they tried several things, and we decided that it would probably be best for her to go to the hospital to get some Pitocin. Well, long story short, she ended up going into full-blown labor when she got to the hospital, but things kind of started stalling out again. She got to up to 8 centimeters on her own without any Pitocin within just a couple of hours after getting to the hospital. But then the baby's heart rate kept dropping. She was not handling any of the contractions very well. They think it was partially because she was so overdue, and she had, later on we found out, a very thin cord, so it was compressing. This is like a whole story, and I think she's actually going to be making a birth story. She has a YouTube channel that's all about Etsy, so it's not really her like niche to like share a birth story, but I think she wants one just for herself. So hopefully she'll get it and put it on YouTube, because I would love to share with you. It was nuts. But anyway, it ended up being the most perfect birth that she needed. I think there was a lot of decisions that had to be made, a lot of things that went completely against her birth plan, but in the end, she got a very healthy baby. They both are doing so amazing, and we think that everything just ended up being a miracle from God, how everything kind of happened and the way that the whole birth kind of unfolded. So thankful that she is now here, but I will say it was a long 48 hours. I stayed with her for the entire 48 hours, and I mean, I was exhausted. She was exhausted. She was like more exhausted. Like I was like so tired and thinking like, I am tired, and I'm just like watching the labor. So I kept Jacob with me. I was thinking about leaving him, but with it getting long, he came with me. So we spent 2 full nights in the hospital. Jacob did great. He was pretty much in my arms, sleeping majority of the time. But overnight during the day, he was up some. It was quite a thing, but we stayed nice and relaxed. She did amazing, and we got a baby. So I was trying to think like, how am I even gonna like close out this video? Like, I'm making food for my sister for her home birth. Now we go to the hospital for 2 days. I haven't slept in like, well, actually, I will say, last night I got some decent sleep. I was hoping to like get 12 straight hours, but Jacob was up a lot overnight, but it's fine. I'm feeling way better. I got some sleep. And my husband's like, well, I don't know what you want to do to close out the video, but our entryway is so dirty and it stinks from all the wet shoes. So why don't you clean the entryway? So here we are cleaning the entryway, the diffuser going, and we're gonna get this room smelling good again. You walk into our home and you're like, oh my word, it smells. My husband said we can't have any people over until we get this room smelling good. So anyway, this is how I'm closing off the video. I don't know the right way to do it. I was kind of doing a day in the life, and then there was like a 3-day break of just being at the hospital, being at my sister's house. I mean, she did a lot of her labor at home before we even left for the hospital, and I was with her the entire time. I was so thankful to be there. Gosh, I was so glad that she kept apologizing to me and saying, sorry you have to be here so long. I'm like, it was like the best thing ever. Then to see that baby come out and just be like, oh, like so sweet. She's the cutest little thing. I hope she shares her birth story. If she does, I'm going to tell you guys, because you guys have to watch it and see her. She's gorgeous. So anyway, here we are. We're cleaning the entryway. It was a crazy week, but I think next week will be a lot calmer and things will go great. My sister is doing so well, and they're actually going to be able to leave the hospital already tomorrow and head home. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button.